Sound matters. Be heard. Welcome to the podcast where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes tips to make your own show sound truly spectacular. This is Podtastic Audio.
Hey, what's happening? How are you doing today? Thank you so much for being here. My name is Chris, and I am from the Chris and Christine Show podcast, hence the name. You can find out all you want to know about that show if you decide to look it up at chrisandchristineshow.com, and there will be a link to that. Yeah, you better believe it, into the show notes of this episode. But here we are at Podtastic Audio, where I help you and any podcaster that wants to start a podcast that may not even know like which end of a microphone to talk into. I mean, that's kind of, I don't know how you screw that up, but people do, But I'm here to help you out, so don't worry about a single thing. So here at Podtastic Audio, I'm going to share with you everything I've done for the Chris and Christine Show, all of our successes and all our failures. That way you learn and we grow, and I help you make an amazing podcast. So I think one thing about creating a decent sounding podcast, let's just say good audio for your podcast, one thing I think it's really key, it's a really simple thing to do, but it seems like it's always overlooked. That is listening back to your podcast episodes. Now, whether you listen to them immediately while you're editing or while you listen, say, I don't know, a week later or 2 weeks later to the same episode, you might hear things that may sound a little different. You're like, well, that sounds weird. And when I mean listen to your podcast, I'm talking about don't listen for content. Oh, that was a very good subject matter we talked about. Oh, I love that content. Let's go beyond that. What do you mean beyond the content? I'm saying is go deeper into the audio. Listen to the nuances of way you say things, how it sounds, any different sounds in the room that may sound kind of weird to you, doesn't sound natural. I guess almost like if you were to listen to a piece of music, think of your favorite artist. Now think of your favorite song they play. When you listen to it, I mean, some of us will go deep dives into the lyrics, but for the most part, we enjoy a song because we enjoy the way it sounds. It's got a good rhythm, a good beat. It may sound great. Maybe your type of music you like. I don't know. But it go deeper than the content, as I'm saying. So listen to your audio and try to figure out, well, maybe I can improve a few things. That's all you have to really do is just listen to yourself and say, maybe I can improve on this or on that. I mean, hone in on the content too, but I'm going to tell you an easy way to get content for your podcast, very, very easy in a little bit here today on this episode. But before we get to all that, I'm saying if you just listen back to your podcast episodes, I've listened to every episode of this one and the Chris and Christine Show multiple times. I listen every single week, and I'm thoroughly enjoy it, and I try to make sure that it sounds the best I possibly can, without spending thousands and thousands of dollars on equipment and gear. And this room here I'm in right now is probably, on paper, it sounds like probably the worst place to record an audio podcast. What I mean by the worst, it's got a solid desk. It's got tile floors. I mean, no sound buffering anywhere in this entire room. Although it does have a couch behind me or a futon. And there's some things in this room to kind of soak up some of the sound. But for the most part, it's literally probably the worst place to record a podcast that you would want to record. I mean, there's some things in here, like I said, to soak up some of that stuff, which makes it better than it would if there was nothing in here. Man, if this place was empty and you tried doing a podcast in here, it would be Echo City. And you're kind of thinking, how do you have multiple people? We've had up to 3 people in this room doing a podcast on 3 separate microphones. You think, God, it'd be Echo City up in here. Well, an easy way to really kind of tame down some of that, because you're always going to have crossbleed between microphones. When you have 2 microphones in the same location, they're always going to pick each other up, especially when they're this close together. We're like a 12 by 12 room or whatever we're in right now. So they're pretty close. So everybody's going to pick up a microphone. One way to tame that down is to actually have the gains a little lower than you normally would and have each person talk really close to the microphone. Each microphone talk extremely close. That way, it really hones in on your voice. I mean, kind of like you're right next to it. You're talking directly into it, almost like you're eating the microphone. Well, don't eat the microphone. It doesn't taste good. But get really close to it and talk. And that really tames some of it down. Another key aspect of that also is when you record your podcast, make sure that you get separate audio tracks every single time. I mean, no, I know sometimes you can't do that for whatever recording device you have, but for the most part, you can easily get separate audio recording tracks. I got one for me, one for Christine, one for the guest, one for the third person that might be in this room right here. Always try to get separate audio tracks when you record. The reason why is because when you go into the editing and you want to take out some of the crossbleed off microphone to microphone, you can see that in the audio track because you can see one track will have somebody talking and the other track, the other person is not talking, but there's a little bit of sound on that track because it's coming over, bleeding over from their mic to your mic. Well, you can go through that. And what I normally would do is highlight that little section of noise, I guess you would call it, and do like a noise reduction on Audacity. It's very simple. Basically, the way it works is you highlight like 3 seconds of noisy audio. You tell the computer, this is what you're going to look for. And it says, great, I know what I'm looking for. So then you go back, highlight the entire thing, and it should remove that noise. Now, it doesn't remove it all 100%. It does a very decent job. And once it does that, then you go through, and anytime there's a bump or a really bad sound that crosses over, then I go in and remove that piece by piece from each side or the other. Basically, the person that's not talking, that audio, I go through and remove any crossbleed or any bumps or anything like that, the best I possibly can. Then, once I have that dialed in on Audacity with the new updates, I can do real-time effects live in real time. So what I do is I add in a little noise gate. It's I have it in mind. It's under the Apple effects, I believe. Anyways, it's in there. You got to play around with your version, but I go in there and I apply a light noise gate. Now, what a light noise gate basically does is that anytime a signal gets below a certain threshold, it actually cuts out that audio. So if there's any kind of noise, perhaps from track to track, it really helps it quite a bit from going track to track, eliminating any crosstalk or any bleed. It really almost wipes it out completely. So it really does help when you have multiple people in the same room talking. You want the audio to really be on their microphone, not have an echo going into the other microphone. This is only possible if you have multiple microphones, and it's only possible if you have separate audio tracks. And once I have that figured out and all sounds good, and I make sure the audio levels are pretty much around the same level. What I mean is like me and the other person, whether it's Christine or somebody else, make sure the audio levels sound about the same in volume. So they're hitting about the same. So you don't want one higher or lower than the other. And then I take all that and I save it in one track, one wave file track. And this is very important. I save everything as a wave up until the bitter end, and then I put it as an MP3, but won't get there yet. So everything is a wave file. Then I run it through my favorite leveling software, that is a Levelator. It's totally free. It's free on the Mac and the App Store, called The Levelator. On Windows, you got to Google it somewhere. There's got to be a download somewhere. I'm not too sure, but definitely it's in the App Store on a Mac device. It compresses the audio, it brightens the audio, and it levels all the audio, makes it all sound fantastic. And once that is done, then I go into the final, I guess, like trimming part of the editing of the podcast. Now, really, it's up to you how much you want to take out or don't take anything out at all. It's really up to you. But this part of the stage is where I would go in and maybe cut out any dead spots, or maybe cut out the long gap at the beginning or gap at the end. Maybe trim some things out, like a couple whatever, things like that. That's where I do that. And I kind of put it together and la-di-da and magic abracadabra. And there we go. We have a podcast. So that kind of takes care of creating the audio for your audio podcast. Very simple stuff. Doesn't take you a lot of time to do it. At least it doesn't take me a lot of time to do it, really. So here we are. But what about the actual content of your podcast? What are you trying to figure out? Like, what am I going to say? Because I really struggle like all the time. And just for the record here, let you know, this show is not scripted at all. Like, I don't write out a script. I don't write out any kind of dialogue or monologue. I don't write out anything except in the show notes. I might mention things that like I talked about on the podcast. Yeah, I'll do that. But here when I'm talking to you, like I don't say like I'm not reading anything right now as I'm telling you this stuff. I'm just talking to you directly. And I think that sounds more organic than just me reading off a script of things. But what if you're not like me and you have to rely on a script? You have to rely on things that are written down. So how do you figure that stuff out? You have to think about this stuff, figure out what you're going to say, maybe write it all out. Well, if you ever struggle with coming up with content to physically write down for your podcast, whether it's a title, questions to ask a certain author or guest or anything like that, or maybe even coming up with a show title itself or even a podcast title itself, well, why don't you try using the great new ChatGPT or AI, as others like to call it? Now, what is even this ChatGPT I keep hearing about? Well, you got to log into the thing, and it's at, I think it's openai.com. That's one I'm on right now. I'm sure there's lots of other ones out there. And I started playing around with this thing, and it started giving me basically anything I want to know. It wrote out a little article or paragraph about, like anything you want. So I just asked it, like, what makes a good podcast? And this is what ChatGPT had to say. It says, a good podcast should have engaging content, interesting guests, a dynamic host. It should have a consistent theme and style that helps listeners feel connected to the show. Finally, a good podcast should have audio quality and production values. Well, see, even the internet AI says you need to have good audio quality. Not just me. I've just been saying that. So then when I ask it, I say, hey, what makes a bad podcast? And this is what it had to say. A bad podcast will have poor audio quality, lack engaging content, and have a disorganized structure. It may also lack a cohesive theme and have uninteresting guests and a dull host. Well, that's what I've been saying for years now. Basically, what it said is don't be boring. But you can put all kinds of things into the system here. It'll give you answers or scripts. It'll give you questions. If you have a guest coming out, you're like, hey, my guest is so-and-so. They're an author. What kind of questions should I ask them? And it'll spit that right out. In fact, I was kind of figuring out what would be a good sales pitch to a company to get a company on board to create a podcast. Because I think podcasting, more than just, funs and giggles and, those kind of podcasts, which are great and all. You can use a podcast to leverage your business if you have an actual company. We're talking some serious podcasting here. So the best sales pitch to get a company to start a podcast is what I wrote into the system. And it says this: if you're looking for a way to reach more customers and build loyalty with your existing ones, a podcast is a perfect solution. With a podcast, you can engage with your customers on a deeper level and provide valuable content that will help them make informed decisions. Plus, podcasts are relatively low cost and easy to produce, so you can quickly create a show that your customers will love. What are you waiting for? Let's get started with your own podcast today. Now, that was all from ChatGPT. I didn't write any of that. That's what they said. That's what they came up with. It's quite amazing, like all the different things you can ask. In fact, I'm on the screen right now, and I'm going to type in, like, say 3 questions to ask a movie director. Or how about a movie? Yeah, movie director sounds good. Director. Let's see what it says. It says, okay, 3 questions. It says, number 1, what inspired you and when were you making this movie? Number 2, how did it go about casting the actors and actresses? Number 3, what was the most challenging part of making this movie? Now, that was for me typing into it right now. That happened live as we're here on the podcast, those 3 questions. So also, you can go a little deeper. Like, say you're going to make a podcast, you know what to call your podcast. So let's say title of a podcast about flowers. Okay, let's see what it says. Oh, Blooming with Beauty, exploring the wonders of flowers. It spit that right out. The Blooming with Beauty, that is the title it created for your podcast if you're struggling to find a title for your podcast. Let's just say you're looking for episode titles. Let's say podcast episode title for a car repair show. Okay, let's tie that in. And it says tune-ups and troubleshooting, keep the car running smoothly. Well, there you go. It came up with a title for your podcast just like that. And I'm sure they could even spit out show notes. I just found out today, you actually can create tweets with it too. It'll say let's say here, let's do it now. Say, write me a tweet about car repair. Okay, let's see that here. It says, don't let trouble slow you down. Keep your ride running smoothly, and some easy tune-ups and troubleshooting tips. Hashtag car repair, hashtag maintenance. See, just like that, very easy. Now you're thinking, where is he getting all this information? Basically what it is, it's all getting it from the internet. Really what it is basically an advanced version of a Google search. It's a Google search, but then it puts it in like a paragraph form that might make sense if you read it out loud versus a bunch of lists of websites where it finds the information. So it kind of finds that information, puts it into a text form that you create. So you want to write an article, or in this case, a tweet, I said, Facebook post, you probably do that. Whatever you want it to do, you can write it in here and figure it out. But you also can use it to write up a summary description of your podcast, assuming you've been around a while or not. So let's try that right now. Let's type in what is Podtastic Audio? All right, see what it says. Okay, here it says Podtastic Audio is a podcast production and audio editing services that help businesses and individuals create high quality podcasts. Well, kind of, I guess. I mean, yeah. So that's what it says about me. It did say a nice lengthy one about the Chris and Christine show. I'm going to type it in again. So why should you listen to the Chris and Christine show? Let's see what it says. You should listen to the Chris and Christine show because they offer engaging and entertaining conversations about life, businesses, and everything in between. Plus, they always bring a positive and upbeat attitude to the table. See? There you go. If you want to have some words of encouragement, you tell the AI robot here to type some good things about your show, and it will spit it out. Actually, you might even be able to post yourselves, write up your own little review. I know I'm totally against review swaps, but if you wanted to create your own little review about your own show that was kind of unique and kind of, not just a basic cookie cutter stuff like, oh, it sounds great, or good content, engaging personalities, make a nice little, that way it's a little more in depth and it has an idea of what your show is about because it kind of figures it out based on these things here. So I restructured our entire podcast summary on the Chris and Christine show. It's a little more lengthy now because originally when we wrote it, we were just dating. So I think it just said something like, we are now dating, or dating after divorce, or dynamic dating duo, all about dating. We've been married for a couple of years now, so I don't think we get rid of that. So I just had it all spit out in a brand new, very well detailed, very well organized, summary description of the Chris and Christine show. Well, that will do. I'll put that right in there. Really easy to update on your media host. And then once you update it there, it becomes updated everywhere. And so now anywhere you go to see the Chris and Christine show description on whatever podcast player you got, it'll tell you the new description, which the AI wrote for us, which basically I love it. I'm looking at it and reading now, wow, we do all that. It is true. Everything they mentioned in their little description, yeah, we talk about. We do have guests. We are entertaining. We do mention things about ourselves. We do talk about our own lives. We are personal. Yeah, I get all of that. It worked out great, and I think it looks great, and I love it. But I got to say, there's a big but here. But use caution when you do this kind of stuff. What's the matter, Chris? What could we possibly be afraid of? Well, always double check all of the things that the GPT chat robot writes for you, because I'll ask it today, as I record this right now, it happens to be Monday and the time is 1:36. I'm going to ask you what day it is. What time is it? So what day is it and what time is it? Time is it. Now, remember, I wrote it is Monday at 1:37 now, 1:37 p.m. And let's see what it says. It says it is Wednesday, May 12th, and it's 11:07 a.m. That couldn't be more wrong than I don't have to tell you. That is way, way off because it's January as I record this. It's saying it's May 12th, according to this thing. So I don't know where it gets its information because, I mean, even Siri or Google can get that right. So I'm not too sure why it gets the day and the date wrong when I ask what day is it. Or unless maybe it's just typing something in about a date and a day, like as if I'm writing a script about a date and a day. I don't know. Maybe I'm doing it wrong, but there's lots of other things you can do on this thing. So when you go to the examples page, it gives you lots of different things it can do. It can do a Q&A, which is basically answering questions it's basic knowledge. It gives you I guess it's Q&A type of stuff. Summarizes for a second grader. And basically, I guess it translates difficult text into simple stuff that anybody else can read. Let's see, text to command, natural language. I don't know what that stuff means. Python, it's their coding language. I'm not a big coder. I don't understand any of that stuff. So don't ask me about coding. I'm not a coding expert, not at all. I failed programming. In fact, I remember in programming, and I was like trying to type up the code, and it could never, ever do what it's supposed to do. And I get so frustrated here. I'm beating the keyboard. I'm like, I can't figure this stupid thing out. I typed it in wrong. It's like, right. You know, it's time that you type in your password. You think it's right like 18 times in a row, and it says it's not right. And then you type it in again, and it's wrong. It's kind of those deals. Keywords, a bunch of code stuff, really. Spreadsheet creator. That's weird. I don't know what that means. Mood to color. I think I can do graphics too. I haven't messed with that part of it. Oh, interview questions. Here we go. At the bottom, it just says interview questions. And the example they write is create a list of 8 questions for a science fiction author. So, one question it says here, what inspired you to write science fiction? What were the themes that you typically explore in your show or whatever? So it gives you a bunch of questions. Now, you don't have to use exactly the question they write up, but you can use this whole thing as a tool to kind of come up with a starting point to figure out what am I going to talk about today? Or what should I write in my show notes? Or I got this author on, but I want to ask questions. Now, not everybody usually asks something a little different maybe. You can use it for that. I mean, the kind of sky's the limit. You can write little articles. In fact, I've been writing articles over on LinkedIn using this thing. Just write a quick little article about something. So I'll ask it hey, what do you think? What would be a good reason to start a podcast? Or why are good audio and podcasts so important? Things like that. And it'll spit out an entire paragraph about it, and you can just copy and paste it. Or you can do a tweet that way too, or a Facebook post. However you want to do it. You can use it to create things. Because for me, when I write these things out, it's never my strong suit, writing stuff down. That's probably why I do not write anything down for a podcast. I don't script, I just talk. I have the gift of blab, I guess. I can just talk till your ears fall off. But when it comes to writing things out, that's where I really struggle to figure out what am I going to write down. And I know that if you are the person that likes to write out your entire show and then read it into the microphone, now that's fine. You can do that. If you like doing that and that's the way your style, then maybe use the chat robot thing here, the AI chat GPT, to figure out some examples of things you could possibly talk about. Use it as a guide rather than a full on replace everything source. In fact, I was talking to my son yesterday. He is in 7th grade, and I was saying, hey, if you ever have any reports you got to do, you could, not saying you should, but you could type in, write me a 7-page report on whatever topic it is, and then boom, it spits it out for you. Now, are people going to be using this to do that? Probably. I can see people in college using this. I can see people anywhere doing this. In fact, that's nothing new. I mean, there have been people who have written essays for other students and paid for them online. That's been going on since forever. But if you have to come up with something quick, it even has resources sometimes, they'll spit in there too. You really got to play around with the thing. I'm on the free version, but I think there's a pay version or something goofy. I just wrote up, when they ask me to sign up for the thing, because you do have to sign up for the thing, I wrote personal, and under personal, let me look at my account here. Manage account. Okay, it says I have, let's see, it gives me these credits or tokens, I guess they call it. And I have it says I have $18 credited and it expires in May of this year. And then it says I have $18 total. And so far, under my free trial usage, I've only used 96 cents. So not even $1 worth I've used so far. And I've been playing around with it quite a bit for the last day or so, just typing everything I can into the thing, paragraphs, articles, tweets, all kinds of stuff into there, trying to find out what this thing can really do and play around with it. So I suggest if you're struggling to figure out, if you're stumped on a show title or stumped on writing notes or something like that for your show, then just put the basic stuff in there and say, write me out whatever you needed to write it out, and it will spit it out for you, and you were good to go. Because in the end of the day, really what this is, it's a time-saving tool because it took me a long time to write stuff out. So if I can spit this into the machine and it will just create something for me that sounds like something I would say or come up with on my own, then it just saved me a bunch of time. That's like the real reason why this stuff kind of exists, really. It's to save time because we're all very busy. I'm very busy. You're very busy. We don't have a ton of time to sit here and write out a book and figure stuff out. So if it can do it for you, go right ahead. Use it. But beware, because not everything on there is 100% accurate. In fact, it was saying something about Christine or somebody else I put in the thing. I said, who is this person? And it said they were an actor or an artist or they were something else with construction. I don't know where it gets information from. But like I said, it wasn't 100% accurate. So double check everything that comes out on the other end. So once again, I want to say thank you so much for listening today. I am here to help you. That's what Podtastic Audio is all about. In fact, I have another podcasting service that I've created I like to call Podcasting Made Easy, which you can find at podtasticaudio.com, or you can go direct at podtasticaudio.com/easy. It doesn't get any easier than that because I have created a way for you to record your podcast. Well, basically, I would record your podcast for you. You get your direct access pass to the K2 studios where I tape up your entire podcast for you, package it, record it, send it off to your media host of your choice. And we're on to the next. That's how it goes. Because I think when you get into podcasting, one thing everybody can't figure out is like how to make the audio sound good. Well, don't you worry about it because I will make it sound the best I possibly can with every tool I have. Make sure you sound great. If I can make others sound great that come in on like headsets and things of that sort, I think I can pretty much make almost anybody sound fairly decent, but I'm not a miracle worker. I'll make it sound great to where everybody can understand each other and nothing's clipping and things of that sort where the audio spiking or getting higher or lower. That thing I kind of notice with people who record podcasts and they don't do really hardly any audio editing to it. They have this kind of spiky kind of sound. I don't know how to explain it, but it gets kind of spiky at the tips a little bit. To its sibilance, I think is what you call it. Anyways, I'll fix all that stuff for you. So all you have to do is just go over to podtasticaudio.com/easy. You meet with me and then we'll figure it all out. So we'll go from there. And you keep on making your fantastic podcast with your amazing audio, and I'll catch you next time.